They found the signal drifting through the black, a faint pulse in the silence of endless space. A distress beacon, fragile but human, flickered from a red star system no chart had ever marked. The message was broken, static torn, but its plea cut through the noise. Help us. They should have ignored it, but they didn't. The crew argued in hushed voices, but the captain's hand lingered on the throttle too long. One of them muttered a prayer, another gripped a photograph, fingers trembling. Their vessel descended into crimson clouds, battered by storms that rolled like living walls. Lightning forked across the atmosphere, painting their hull in blood-red flashes. The storm carried a sharp tang of ozone, and each crack of thunder rattled through the hull like a warning. Then the gravity struck, sudden, crushing, stronger than any world should bear. Engines failed. Hull alarms screamed in frantic bursts. The vessel was dragged downward as if seized by invisible claws. It hit the surface with a violence that bent metal and shattered steel. The wreck groaned in the grip of a barren desert, the ship twisted and broken. Around them stretched sand the color of blood, endless and merciless, whipped by storms that scoured their visors raw. Grit stung their skin through the seals. The desert smelled of scorched dust, like burned iron. And beyond the dunes, something else waited. The ship was crippled. Even if the storms eased, repairs would take days. All the survivors could do was wait and endure. And beyond the wreck, on the horizon, a pale band shimmered. Something white, something strange. At first they thought it was salt. Or perhaps ice, a trick of the sun through the red haze. But as they drew closer, the truth revealed itself. It was a sea of bones. Endless, piled high as waves frozen in motion. Bleached skulls and shattered ribs gleamed beneath the stormlight. Vertebrae twisted into drifts. Spines curled into grotesque shapes like dunes, sculpted by unseen tides. Among the alien wreckage of skeletons not meant for human eyes, familiar shapes lay scattered. Human skulls, weathered but unmistakable. Helmets cracked open like shells. The ocean was littered with the rusting husks of ships from across centuries, broken and half-buried, claimed by the white tide. They were not the first. The survivors combed through the wrecks, desperate for answers. Inside, they found fragments of journals and scorched data records, left behind by crews who had come before. The pages smelled of mold and sand, the words scrawled in panic. Each log told the same story. The beacon was a lure. The crash was no accident. And the sea was alive. The crew sat in silence, only the sound of the storm against the wreck. One clenched their fists until blood welled from their palm. Another whispered, "It's still here, watching." That night, as the twin suns dipped below the dunes, they stood watch beside the wreck. Torches sputtered in the dark, their flames fragile against the endless horizon. The wind died. The desert grew silent. For hours, nothing stirred. Each breath in their helmets sounded too loud, and every shift of sand made them flinch. Then, the bones began to move. First a rattle, faint as teeth clicking. Then a shifting, rolling sound, like surf pounding a distant shore. The tide surged. White dunes broke open. Ribs tumbled like logs in a flood. Skulls rolled together, jaws clattering. And from that avalanche of bone, skeletal arms reached upward. One of the crew was seized. He screamed, a raw human sound, but it was cut short as the tide swallowed him whole. The desert roared, then fell silent again. When morning came, only a shattered helmet remained, half buried in the red sand. The others stood around it, staring in silence, unable to speak. They should have fled inland, but the storms hemmed them in, crimson walls rising in every direction, forcing them back toward the sea. Each night it drew closer. Each night it grew bolder. The tide took form. Bones fused together into shapes that mimicked life. A serpent weaving across the dunes, its body an endless chain of spines. A crawler with too many arms, its claws dragging through the sand. A giant hand rising from the sea, reaching toward the stars as if to drag them down. They fought back with fire, with flares, with anything that burned. The smell of scorched bone hung in the air. The skeletal shapes recoiled from the flames, shrieking in cracks and rattles. At dawn, silence returned. But silence did not bring peace. From the tide stumbled a figure, the one they had lost the night before. He staggered forward, pale skin stretched thin, his body fused with jagged bone. And then he collapsed, lifeless. The sea had tried to make him its own. By day, the desert mocked them. Sometimes the bone sea shimmered like water under the red suns, an illusion of beauty, waves lapping at a shore that didn't exist. But beneath the shimmer, skeletons shifted, restless and waiting. Worse still, each sunrise revealed the tide creeping closer to the wreck. The line of bones stretched nearer each morning, like blood soaking into sand, inevitable and unstoppable. The storms thickened. Crimson lightning split the sky, illuminating dunes like an open wound. And in those flashes, shadows appeared, shapes too vast to name moving in the storm above. They were colossal, formless yet humanoid, watching, as if the sky itself leaned down to see. Fear gnawed at them. One broke. He ran into the desert, desperate to flee the sea's edge, desperate to escape the waiting tide. His footprints vanished in the storm behind him. By dawn, they found him again. His body was shredded, torn apart, half buried in drifting bone. The others stood in silence, the storm sighing low around them. None dared speak. That night, hope returned. Through the storm, they saw lights. Rescue ships descended through the clouds, search beams cutting across the dunes. The survivors ran, shouting, waving, torches blazing against the dark. But as they drew closer, their hope curdled to horror. The ships weren't real. They were constructs, shaped from bone and lit with false light. Their silhouettes shimmered in the storm before collapsing into heaps of skulls and ribs. And as the illusions fell, the tide surged forward, seizing another soul and dragging them screaming beneath the white waves. The survivors fell silent again, hope stripped raw. By then, only a few remained. They worked through the storms, patching their ship with trembling hands, sparks flaring against the crimson sky. On the fifth night, the sea made its final move. It rose higher than ever before, a towering wall of bone blotting out the horizon. Figures formed, humanoid, vast, each built from thousands of skeletons. They loomed like giants at the edge of the wreck, their hollow eyes fixed on the survivors. Then the tide fused into one. A leviathan of bone rose, taller than the mountains, its vast frame blotting out the storm-lit sky. It leaned forward, jaw gaping wide as if to swallow them whole. The survivors launched their ship. Engines roared, metal screamed. The vessel shuddered as it clawed upward. Below, the Leviathan collapsed, its titanic frame crumbling into an avalanche of bones that thundered across the desert like the end of the world. They broke free of the storm, battered but alive, and slipped into orbit. Relief swept through them, until they looked back. The sea below wasn't just a sea. It wasn't a patch of coast. It stretched around the entire planet, a white ring beneath crimson clouds. The surface was littered with wrecks, hundreds, maybe thousands, strewn like scars, faintly glowing in the stormlight. They had escaped, but the truth was clear. This was no planet. It was a trap, and it would feed again. Behind them, the beacon pulsed again.